Hey, everybody. It is Trags Mike Petraglia alongside Richard Skinner of Local 12 and Local12.com. And this is the Jungle Roar Bengals postgame pod following a stunning 32-14 upset of the Baltimore Ravens here in downtown Baltimore. Look, Joe Burrow being back on the field looked inspiring enough, but I've got to say that it was more than just Joe Burrow on this Thursday night, this Thanksgiving night in Crab Cake City. It was the defense. There was a lot to get to that I think factored into the Bengals running away with this game. Evan McPherson with 6 field goals on the night, 6 for 6, and the Bengals forcing 5 turnovers of the Ravens. But we do have to start with Joe Burrow. Look, he was on the field. He was effective enough. He threw 2 touchdowns, didn't throw any interceptions. What were your biggest impressions of what Joe Burrow was able to do here on Thursday night?
Yeah, there's no doubt he looked rusty. I mean, he missed a couple of throws that he'll normally make. I honestly thought it was almost a disservice that Zac Taylor dropped him back 33 times in the first half, 32 of those that were pass attempts, another one that was a sack. It was almost as if, he didn't think the kid was coming back from injury, but he hung in there, started to get the rust worn off a little bit, made a couple of big throws, the one to Tanner Hudson for a touchdown. That was a great catch as well, one-handed. And then the touchdown pass to Andre Yoshivach was a great throw. And I think there was an uplifting moment to having Joe Burrow back, the intangible of it. That's not to knock what Joe Flacco did. I think teammates would even, credit what Joe Flacco did. But it's just different with Joe Burrow. Scoopy just sounds, Mike, he started 3 games this year, and while he really didn't lead them to a win over Jacksonville, the Bengals are 3-0 in games Joe Burrow started this year.
And he is 8-0 in his last 8 starts. If you go back to last year, it's really remarkable what the Bengals look like when Joe Burrow is at the helm, even if their defense is suspect. And it was for a good portion of this season, but the Bengals seem to be turning the corner in that regard. But I want to stay on Joe Burrow for just a second. And I know Jay Morrison tweeted this out, I think it was at halftime, that the 32 pass attempts, the second most in the first half of any game Joe Burrow has ever played as a Bengal. That just seems like you mentioned, Skinny, a lot to expose Joe Burrow to. But I guess maybe if Zac Taylor wanted to see if Joe Burrow could take that kind of wear and tear, he got his answer early on.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, if I didn't know he was coming back from turf toe, I would have never known it. I mean, he moved around fine. He scrambled a couple of times, nothing major, but bought a little bit of time here and there. He was only sacked 1 time. They ran him on a quarterback sneak. I mean, I would have never known this is a guy coming back from turf toe. And maybe that's the way you got to treat him. If he's out there and we've deemed him healthy, he deems himself healthy, let's just go.
Well, I'll tell you, Skinny, I am in the press conference room where the Bengals spoke after the game. Zac Taylor, followed by Joe Burrow, followed by Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow was about as emotional as I've seen him in quite a long time. He just seemed very reflective, and yes, it was Thanksgiving, so he's very grateful and thankful in his comments for the ability to come back and play football this year, grateful and thankful to his loved ones. He didn't want to name them by names, but he said they know who they are. For everyone that supported him, and of course his teammates who helped them through this process. Joe Burrow was in a very grateful mood, and it was a reflective Joe Burrow, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. I saw it, and I thought the same thing. And I just think this guy does love football so much that when it's taken away from him, I'm sure it hurts a lot, and the chance to get back to playing it again means a lot to him. And I think this goes back to the whole mantra from a chunk of the fan base, and maybe even some members of media, I don't know. But I know a good chunk of the fan base of, why are you going to expose him? Why are you going to play him? Because he wants to play. It's what he does for a living. It's what he loves to do. And you're still mathematically alive. You're more mathematically alive tonight than I thought would be even humanly possible. And if Pittsburgh loses to Buffalo, as goofy as it sounds, you're 2 games out with still another crack at this team, a chance to hold all the cards when it comes to all the division tiebreakers. I don't think they do it. I mean, it's a big ask, but you're still hanging around.
Well, I'll tell you what, Skinny, the test is going to be in 10 days going up to Buffalo and seeing if they can win on the road in Western New York. Joe Burrow's won there before in more hostile conditions. Remember the snowstorm in the AFC divisional round? Not a lot of people gave them a chance to go up there and win. And what did they do? They won 27-10 and moved on to Kansas City. They lost that AFC title game, but they have won in Buffalo before with Joe Burrow at the helm. So it's doable, and the defense is playing much better. Joe Burrow was very honest and very frank. He said, we left too many plays on the field. We can't have Evan McPherson kicking 6 field goals in any given game, because that means we're not getting in the end zone. Bengals were 0 for 4 in the red zone in the first half. That's just not acceptable. And it really didn't get solved until Tanner Hudson made a remarkable one-handed grab on 3rd and 9 early or midway through the third quarter to put some separation in the game, put the Bengals up 19-7, I believe it was at that point. But you could just feel the whole Bengals sideline exhale when the Bengals finally scored a touchdown there.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have settled for another field goal, it's still a one-score game at that point. It would have been 15-7 instead of 19-7. I'll be honest with you, Mike, after Cedric Johnson recovered that fumble down deep in Baltimore territory in the first half, and they didn't get any points out of it, I thought, yep, this is this team in a nutshell, man. They get a great break from the defense. The defense actually created the break. I shouldn't say they get a break. The defense created the turnover.
Right.
You get nothing out of it. Here we go. And, no, they kept fighting through all that stuff. And, listen, Evan's been great this year. I think he's missed, 4 field. He hasn't missed under 50 yards yet this year.
No, he has
a chunk
not.
Of them over 50.
Correct.
And a couple of his misses were from 56 in the wind and 67 up in Green Bay. So he's been great. But, yeah, you can't do that and expect to win a lot of games, especially on the road, which makes it even more surprising you won going away by 18 points tonight.
I know a lot of Bengal fans lost their minds, and some of us in the press box here in Baltimore were stunned when the Bengals got a terrific strip fumble sack by Joseph Osai, and like you said, got the turnover that was recovered by Cedric Johnson at the 2-yard line. To not be able to score there, to have 3 passes, 1 run, all in shotgun formation, you had to wonder what was going through Zac Taylor's mind at that point. Why couldn't the Bengals turn to a power formation? Yes, Joe Burrow's in the game, but you need to score a touchdown there.
Yeah, no doubt. I was kind of perplexed myself. I didn't mind them going on 4th down, but to your point, the 3 passes to 1 run, line up and just come downhill and let's go. It was one of those moments where I thought, yep, this is what this season's been all about. It's stuff like this right here where you just can't cash in or
line up in power formation, Skinny. Not to interrupt you. Line up in power formation. Throw to a tight end on a flare. Do something creative. Roll if you're going to roll Joe Burrow out and they're expecting a run, a play action is the perfect time to do it. And if anybody can read the defense, even under center, which he would have been in a power formation with maybe 2 or let's say 3 tight ends, just get creative. It just seemed like the Ravens were going with man coverage. They were going cover 0 in that particular case, according to Zac Taylor after the game. And it's something that Taylor said they've seen before from the Ravens in a low red zone type of situation, which is what it was. But if you're Zac Taylor and Dan Picture, you have to be a little more creative, and you've got to out-scheme the Ravens in that case.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Burrow was under center a chunk more than I expected him to be tonight. I think that was the thing going in, is would they incorporate some more under center stuff, or would that be too much for him to push back with the toe? And what a perfect time to do more under center stuff down there. And they just didn't do it, but they got away with it because they still won handily. Also, we should make note that Joe Burrow in his press conference after the game said his toe felt actually a little bit better than he thought it would, and he was actually, the real quote was, he was more mobile in tonight's game, able to run around with no discomfort whatsoever, more than he thought he was going to be able to. And I thought that was really significant, Skinny. Yeah, and especially in the cold. I thought with the combination of the cold and the toe, and you get warmed up, and maybe you go out and play a series, and you go back to the sideline, and the toe reacts to the cold, and not playing for a few snaps or a handful of minutes, that it would have been a negative. And it really was. Like I said, Mike, if I didn't know he was coming back from that injury, I would have never believed it. I thought he looked like a normal Joe Burrow to me. Yeah, and I also want to point out that after the game, Joe Burrow said that he
the rust he felt was that in his feet, and not painful. It wasn't a physical discomfort. It was that he was fidgety and his feet were antsy. That's the word he used after the game. Yeah. He was antsy in the pocket, more sped up, and he didn't. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't expect to feel so antsy in the pocket. But that's where I think Joe Burrow noticed it the most in the first half. His feet were antsy.
Yeah, and if you go back to some of his early years of not playing preseason games, he's actually talked about that, where you're just sped up early in the season to where you have to catch up to what the game speed is all about. You can try to replicate it in practice and training camp and those things. And that's where, he's basically coming out of 7 weeks of not playing football, or actually more than that, 9 weeks of not playing football.
Right.
It's almost like literally he's just hopping in and playing again. Well, yeah, you got to get used to the game speed, and I fully understand that comment.
Some noteworthy moments in this game, Skinny. First of all, Lamar Jackson had been 10-1 as a starter against the Bengals coming into this game. He now drops to 10-2. The Ravens had not allowed 20 points, let alone 30. 20 points in a game in 6 straight games. That streak comes to an end. The Ravens see their 5-game winning streak come to an end. The Bengals were able to slay a lot of demons in this game tonight, and it's one reason why I think there's still a glimmer of hope, as you said earlier, Skinny, for the Bengals to make one last run at the AFC North.
Yeah, and it should be noted the Ravens in that winning streak really have not played quality teams or quality quarterbacks for the most part. So some of that's a little tainted. And I'll be honest with you, Lamar doesn't look right to me. I mean,
no, agreed.
He wasn't very accurate. I know he's been dealing with the hamstring injury. I think he scrambled 5 times for 27 yards, but he just didn't look right. And that's his problem, not the Bengals' problem. I mean, they took advantage of that. But I told you before we started the podcast, I thought Todd Monken did a disservice to his team too, the offensive coordinator of the Ravens. The first half, they only ran the ball 8 times. There was 9 rushing attempts because Lamar took a knee at the end of the half, but they only ran the ball 8 times against arguably one of the worst run defenses, actually statistically the worst run defense in the NFL. That makes no sense to me. Part of me wonders, did he think, I'm going to try to get Lamar right tonight, and I'm going to try to get him confidence tonight, and I'm going to throw the ball a lot because of that? It was just weird to watch because the Derrick Henry run looked so easy for them, and then they just kind of abandoned the run game.
So that's the whole thing. When you get that run of 28 yards down the left sideline, and the Bengals defense, I remember tweeting it saying the bad tackling Bengals are back, and 3 Bengals had a chance to attack him, 2 within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and failed miserably. He blew right by them. McKinley Jackson, I don't know where he was playing, Skinny, on that first defensive series, but it did not look good whatsoever. Maybe it was the second defensive series. He just didn't look right. He looked out of place. He was getting put. Here's what I said to someone in the press box sitting next to me. I said, it's great that McKinley Jackson's getting push. They also want you to get push because they were running a lot of draws and a lot of traps, and Derrick Henry was running right by them. Why in the world Todd Monken would want to scheme away from that is beyond me.
I think because honestly he thought that, we're going to be just fine. I'm going to get Lamar confidence. I'm going to get him going tonight. And he never did. And by the time they maybe thought about running the football, because they started the second half running the ball pretty effectively on a few runs. And then all of a sudden you look up, it's 19-7, and they keep turning the ball over, and the game gets away from them. I'll be interested. I've not seen quotes yet from the Baltimore side of things, but I'll be interested to see what John Harbaugh says about how they schemed that game up, because it just didn't look right. Again, the Bengals took full advantage of that. Yep. And to your earlier point, the defense has shown some signs of life. This is 3 games in a row where the defense has played okay. The 5 turnovers really were created. I mean, they knocked balls loose. The interception by Demetrius Knight was caused by pressure from Miles Murphy. And I think that's the good part. It wasn't like you were gifted 5 turnovers. You went and forced 5 turnovers for the most part.
Maybe perhaps one of the most remarkable turnovers of the night came from Jordan Battle, because it looked like for all the world Isaiah Likely was headed in for a touchdown that I think would have put the Ravens up 14-6 at that point.
I think that's right.
And, you're thinking he goes in The Ravens have got momentum. They've got 14 points on the board. Everybody's feeling right. To your point about Lamar Jackson, maybe Todd Monken's like, yeah, we're getting Lamar to really feel some confidence, throwing, completing passes downfield, over the middle. Isaiah Likely just totally boat raced Jordan Battle at the point of attack, at the point of the catch. But then Jordan Battle, to his credit, did not give up on the play. He raced down from behind, popped the ball loose. That was a huge, huge moment in the game.
Huge moment, because you're right at 14-6. Suddenly, it feels like it starts to slip away a little bit. Like, Baltimore's feeling it, Lamar's feeling it. Maybe their pass rush starts to go a little bit. I mean, you're not in panic mode if you're the Bengals at that point. You're only down a score at 14-6, but still, it would have been a totally different feel to the game. And so, yes, that was a huge, huge play by Jordan Battle to not only get to Likely, but to poke it out and have it go out of the end zone.
What were your thoughts on the offensive pass interference on Zay Flowers with DJ Turner in coverage? Another first-half touchdown that was taken off the board for the Ravens.
I think the Bengals caught a break, to be honest with you. I mean, he did extend a hand, but you see a lot of that stuff go on, and it's not called. And I again, take your break and run with it, because the Bengals certainly did. I'm indifferent either way. That I think that call would have been. I can go, okay, I can see that. Again, you got a break there. You took advantage of the break, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that I think needs to come away from this is, yes, you created some breaks, but you took advantage of some of the breaks you were given, and I think that's a good sign. Skinny, this is just one game, but I want to ask you, from the things you saw tonight, what are the most important things that the Bengals can make use of moving forward?
The fact that they're now starting to put a bunch of guys at the line of scrimmage and say, you know what, we're coming. Oh, no, we're not coming. I don't know what maybe took Al Golden so long. I don't think he's a guy who likes to blitz a lot, but I think he eventually, maybe even during the bye, went, you know what, I can't get home with 4. I got to start sending a bunch of people and showing a bunch of guys at the line of scrimmage. It's not what I like to do. It's not my cup of tea. It's not the way I want to call a game. But I got to start showing some more pressures because we can't get home with 4. And I think you saw it last week in the New England game. Geno Stone was pretty effective as a blitzer. You saw some double A-gap looks where they came. One would come, one would not. You saw some tonight where, Demetrius Knight, I can't remember, it might have even been one of the turnovers. I think it might have been one of the ones where Lamar tried to look like kind of a version of the tuck rule where Lamar tried to throw it and let it go out of his hands. I think Demetrius was in the A-gap and was looking like he was coming, ducked out at the last second. Credit to Al Golden for the adjustment. I could also ask, what took you so long? But they finally have done it. In 3 games now, Mike, gave up 20 points to the Steelers, 19 points to New England, and 14 points tonight. That's winning football. Now, again, when you look back, you're saying, wait a minute, the Steelers scored 34. Yeah, two defensive touchdowns. New England had a defensive touchdown. But defensively, you've only given up 53 points in the last 3 games combined. That with Joe Burrow back is a recipe to win. I don't know if they can sustain it. But right now, they're doing some good things on defense. They're more physical against the run for the most part. I think they've taken a little step forward here. I don't know if it's sustainable. We're going to find out. But I will give Al Golden credit for, it looks like, changing things up and saying, I'm going to just show a bunch of guys at the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to figure out if we're coming or if we're not coming.
You talked about putting guys at the line of scrimmage. One case where it really did fool Ronnie Stanley and the Ravens offensive line, Skinny, was following the Zay Flowers offensive pass interference. They got pushed back 10 yards. And then on 3rd down, it was Jordan Battle at the line of scrimmage. And instead of taking Joseph Osai on the edge, Ronnie Stanley pinched inside, took Battle, left Osai with a clean lane to Lamar. He didn't miss, sacked Lamar, knocked him out of field goal range, and the Ravens punted, and it was a touchback. That was also another huge moment.
Yeah, no, again, that's I think that's the thing that Al's doing right now, and I remember that vividly. Where you're right. I mean, Ronnie Stanley took the wrong guy. He ended up taking the blitzer and left Joseph Osai uncovered, and he came and, to your point, finished as well. So I'll give Al some credit. Again, I could argue it took maybe too long for him to decide to do this, but at least he's doing it now.
Also, I spoke to Joseph Osai for a couple of minutes in the locker room after and asked him about that play and about his strip sack fumble in the first quarter. And he said, we have put in so much hard work. And I know it's cliche to say this, but we're all starting to play together. We're not playing hero ball. We're playing as a unit. We're listening to what our coaches are telling us, but we feel much more free in how we're playing defense. And that's really stuck out to me.
Yeah, and listen, man, confidence is a lot in sports. You have to earn the confidence. You got to play well to earn that. You can't just say, I'm confident and go do it. But once it starts to go in the right direction, sometimes it goes for a while in the right direction. And the Bengals have to have it go really well in the right direction because they probably have to run the table to win the AFC North. I'll be honest, I'm not so sure I'd be shocked if 8-9 wins this division at the moment, but you probably have to run the table to do that. But at least you took some steps in the right direction.
Quite a night for Evan McPherson, 6 for 6. He played a huge role in this game. Maybe, as Joe Burrow said after the game, too big of a role, but still 6 for 6. He told us after the game he had never done that in a contest before.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, there were some questions about him last year of, is Evan losing it? Is he slipping? I never thought that. I mean, I know that last game against the Chargers last year when he missed a couple of key field goals kind of had you questioning that. But, I mean, he only missed 6 field goals last year, and 4 of those, I believe, were from 50 yards or longer. Now, you could argue he's a great long-range kicker, but anything beyond 50 yards, man, unless you're the Dallas kicker, are really difficult kicks, right or wrong. And to the point we made earlier, Evan's perfect from inside 40 or inside 50 yards this year. He's had a complete bounce back year, and good for him because I still think Evan's going to kick in this league a long, long time and very successfully.
I think so too, and and the special teams tonight I think deserved high marks because coverage was excellent. There was nothing that gave the Baltimore Ravens anything north, I think, of their own 35-yard line. I thought the coverage was good. The kicking was good. There was, I believe, a touchback from Ryan Rico.
Yep.
But other than that, I just thought the field position game was really won well by the special teams.
And how many times does it feel like you've gone into Baltimore when Justin Tucker kicked and he kicked 4 or 5 field goals and they'd end up beating you because of that? Well, you turn the tables tonight because your kicker made 6 of them.
Let's talk. Skinny, we haven't talked enough about 2 players tonight that I thought were massive. Ja'Marr Chase, 7 of 14, meaning 7 catches, 14 targets, 110 yards on a night when the Bengals did not have one T. Higgins. And I just cease to be amazed by the ability of Ja'Marr Chase to get open, even when he's facing cloud, double, man, double coverage, everything they can possibly throw at him, he manages to find a way to get open and catch the ball.
Yeah, I know Joe talked about in the postgame that, there were times they'd double him, times they'd single him, and you kind of have to pick your spots. But to that point, I guarantee they doubled him probably more than they singled him, and you still targeted him 14 times, and he still comes up with 7 catches for 110. On a night where Andre Yoshivash only has 1 catch and Mitchell Tinsley's your other receiver. Mitchell was great tonight too again. But, it is amazing when T. Higgins is not out there that they still somehow find a way to get Ja'Marr Chase over 100 yards. That's hard for any receiver in this league, let alone a guy who faces as much coverage as he does, especially facing as much coverage as he does because there's no T. Higgins on the other side. So, yes, it was quite a night. And that also included Joe missing him on a deep ball. I mean, he had I think it was Marlon Humphrey beat on a deep ball and Joe missed him.
Yeah, and I actually thought if it's the same ball I'm thinking of, Joe threw it shallow to the sideline, and if he leads him down the field, he had Humphrey beat, like you said. That was definitely going to be 6 points. The catch of the night, by the way, was the 42-yarder. I believe that was in the first quarter where Ja'Marr twisted his body, and Joe laid an absolute dime. And it just that kind of play, Skinny, reminds me of how special it is watching Joe Burrow throw to Ja'Marr Chase.
Yeah, just throw in general. I mean, he made some of those, and that's the other part to this. Tonight there was rust. There was times where you're wondering, how can he shake the rust off? It's only going to continue to get better and better and better, in my opinion, as long as the toe holds up. And tonight was a good step in that right direction. The
only criticism I would have of Mitchell Tinsley tonight was on the go ball, second quarter, was it?
When he stopped.
And I tweeted, it looked like Mitchell Tinsley ran that route like he wasn't expecting the ball to be thrown to him.
Correct.
And you could see the disgust in Joe Burrow's face because he's like, if you keep running, that's an easy 6. And the reason that was significant at the time, Skinny, is the Bengals had already gone 0 for 3 in the red zone, and they were having trouble getting the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, there was a part of me too, because Tanner Hudson gets Joe Burrow opportunities because Joe Burrow loves him from Tanner Hudson because he can trust Tanner Hudson, right? And as soon as that look of disgust on Joe Burrow's face after Tinsley stopped running, well, I almost thought, uh-oh, you're going to be in the Joe Burrow doghouse. He's not going to throw it to you again. And yet he did. He trusted him on a couple of tough throws later on in the game, and Mitchell came up big. But, yeah, that was one where that should have been 6 if he just keeps running.
Yeah, but I think Mitchell Tinsley, because of his work ethic, has built up so much goodwill. I think Joe can look the other way. I want to ask you kind of a off-the-cuff question here, Skinny. When Joe Burrow is on the field, who's running the offense, Joe Burrow or Zac Taylor?
I think a combination. I mean, Joe does do a lot at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if it got picked up on, if you could hear it or not, but there was one sequence where he was actually calling the play clock down. He
yes,
said,
I did. I heard that.
We have time 8,
calling
7,
it out to
6.
Ted Karras.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
I thought that was actually kind of funny. I'm not sure I've ever heard that before. No, I think it's a combination of the two. I mean, he's obviously got freedom to check, right? No question about that. But I think he also trusts Zach, and I think that's what the two work in sync pretty well.
Well, it's funny you say that. I wish I had known that before I spoke to Ted Karras in the locker room after the game. Karras said that's why Joe Burrow is our leader. That game is why there's very few people on the planet like Joe Burrow who can make throws like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, no, I think this was uplifting in a lot of ways for a lot of guys to at least give you a pulse heading down the stretch of this season.
Well, and I think it's a good way for the Bengals to go into a very well-deserved bye week. This has been a hellacious season for them. They're 4-8. They were 4-8 last year, Skinny, and we know, but they had a loss to the Steelers to go to 4-8. Everybody had written them off then. I think a lot of people, including you and me, wrote them off after losses at Pittsburgh and then home to New England. They still have a pulse, don't they?
Yeah, no, they do. That's what I'm going to write tomorrow is they have a pulse, and this is why Joe Burrow came back, to get you back to playing some meaningful football this season. And, you look up, the Steelers and Baltimore still have to play each other twice. I think Baltimore still has to play New England. Pittsburgh, I think, still has to play New England. I mean, they both have some tough roads ahead for themselves. And obviously the Bengals control another game with Baltimore coming here in a couple of Sundays. So it's a faint pulse, but there is a pulse.
So the schedule is at Buffalo a week from Sunday, home to Baltimore in 2 Sundays, and then home to Arizona. At Miami after the Baltimore game, at Miami, then home to Arizona, home to Cleveland. Look, I know it's one game at a time, but you win those 2 games against Buffalo and Baltimore at home, Buffalo on the road, you've got a legitimate conversation at 6-8.
No question, because of the fact that you will have handed Baltimore at least its 7th loss, and if it loses 8 and you sweep them and you both finish 9-8, well, guess who's going to have the tiebreaker advantage? You are.
It's remarkable we're still having this conversation.
Yeah, I know it.
At 4-8, but hey, those are the crazy things. Having Joe Burrow back, having a team that has confidence, and having a team that's playing complementary football. Zac Taylor, one of the first things he said tonight was, this was our first complementary, all-around good game of the season. And I think, I'll leave it on that note with you, Skinny, why that's so important.
No, it is. I mean, there's no question about it. That's how you win in this league. They won the first game of the year primarily because of the defense. They won the second game of the year primarily because, of the offense. They won the Pittsburgh game primarily because of the offense. Tonight, it all worked hand in hand. And what do you get? You get yourself a sound victory.
Again, remind us what you're working on for tomorrow, Skinny, on Local 12.
Yeah, just about the fact that there is a pulse to this season. And here's why Joe Burrow did come back to play. For all those wondering, just put him, wait till next year. No, that's not why you do this. You do this to try to continue to win games because as long as you have a chance, you have to keep trying to win games.